Hello, hello, welcome everybody to this very exciting Storytelling for Magic book launch party. I am absolutely delighted to have you here and thrilled that this is finally out in the world. I finished this over a year ago and got it into the publisher. So that's how long it takes for and it took months and months to finish before that. Obviously, it's a book, it takes time. And that's how long it then takes to sort of wait for it to reach people in the world. So it is my absolute delight that Storytelling for Magic has emerged into the worlds of witches, wizards, druids, magicians, pagans, bards, and the curious. I am Halo Quinn, if you didn't know that already, and I am an author, obviously a storyteller, and primarily a witch, though I'm also technically a druid and a bard and an occultist as well. I wear many hats. And I am a doctor of philosophy. I have a PhD in the philosophy of storytelling. Specifically, and I'm telling you this because it's relevant, specifically in the phenomenology of storytelling, in the experience of telling and listening to stories and creating a world together. And one of the reasons that I pursued that with my philosophy hat on was because everything that I found in that space was magical. When we enter into a storytelling space, we enter into a story, whether we're listening or speaking or telling a tale using other mediums. It is a co-created world. We are conjuring enchantments. And so that inspired this. I was also inspired to write this because so many people said to me when I got up on stage or round a fire or round a dinner table, or you can't stop me telling stories if you give me an opening, I'm afraid. So many people said to me after I tell a tale, I wish I could do that, but I could never remember it, or I wouldn't know how. I could never be a storyteller, I could never be a bard. And one of the things that I would invite you to reflect on is the fact that we are all, as human beings, storytelling animals. It is what we do so naturally. Every one of you, every single one of you have told stories because this is how we communicate with each other. This is how we share with each other. So I invite you to reflect on that as we meander through our next hour together. Whether you are here live or on the replay, I invite you to tune into the space, and I hold the intention that the magic that engulfs us, the circle that I'm going to cast now, will hold us across wires and Wi-Fi, time and space, beyond this moment and into all moments, because all time is one time, and magic moves beyond that limitation of the now of our perception. As I light this candle, I invite you to feel the light shining through the video. And if you can't see it, then I invite you to just know that it is coming there and to listen to the sound of the lighter and to feel that energy. And as the light shines across wires and Wi-Fi, time and space, it shines out into each of our spaces, casting a circle, a globe, a sphere of light, of magic. And I invite you to take a breath. And as you breathe out, to feel the earth beneath you, to remember the land that you are on. Whatever your relationship to that land is, and to the peoples of that land, feel your connection to it now, to the earth. And take another breath And as you breathe out, turn your awareness up to the sky above, to the stars through which the stories of generations upon generations have been woven, millennia of tales through the constellations to guide us across sea, across land, around the world, through our lives. And now together, we take a breath. We remember the sea and the waters that move around the lands that we are in, through the lands that we are in, through the sky that we are in, through our own bodies. Our bodies that have water flowing through them, that are made of earth, that are blessed by starlight. And as you breathe in, feel that air flowing into your lungs, into your body, and know that every breath in and every breath out is connecting you with the air, with the other living beings of the world, with the waters, with the plants, with all the beings. For we share that air. And we breathe it in, and it brings inspiration. And when we breathe it out, we can send that magic out to re-enchant the world. Take a moment to just feel yourself in the here, in this space, resting upon the earth, between the earth and sky, in this circle of light and magic. Normally I'd use a fancier candle, but today I wanted to use a tea light so I can place it in my cauldron. And onto this cauldron, it's an oil burner really. I'm going to place an offering of incense made, this one is for Ceridwen. And Ceridwen is the Welsh modern goddess. She's ancient, she's in old stories, but we don't know how she was seen in the times before our time. But nowadays she is a goddess of inspiration and of initiation. And back in the medieval times, even the Christian bards said that it was through Ceridwen's cauldron that inspiration, the divine light that came from God as they saw it, that inspiration, that magic flowed into the world. Even they knew that that inspiration came through the witch's cauldron. And so I invite you to take a moment to welcome, in whatever way feels right to you, the old bards, the deities of inspiration, the skalds, the poets. Just take a moment to reflect on how you are in a long lineage of people who have told stories, who have woven words, who have enchanted through their voice. So I'd like to read to you a few bits from the book, Storytelling for Magic, so that you can get a taste of what's in it. And maybe it will bring up some thoughts and some ideas and some questions. And there'll be space that I will invite you to share that with me later. If you're here live, then you can share that live. And if you're watching on the replay, then pop comments, add questions. I'll come back. We can have conversations there as well. I step into the center of the circle, for tonight is my turn to tell part of the tale. I take a deep breath, drawing up the power of the earth, sweeping my staff round to gather in the waiting witches. There is a moment of stillness, of silence, as we wait together for that first word to move from potential into expression, for the enchantment to begin. I feel silence of listening itself, calling to the divine inspiration that we in Wales call Arwen. This book is a guide to using the skills of the bard in your rituals to enhance your magic, whether crafting spells on your own or performing ritual for a crowd. In these pages, you will learn how to use your voice in magic, how to unravel the secrets of stories, how to craft your own rituals to bring the power of myths and folktales into your life, and how to find, learn, and tell stories that enchant your audience. I am both a professional storyteller and a ritualist, and I first learned how powerful storytelling could be in reclaiming witchcraft tradition rituals, and at the pagan celebrations at Avebury, which is near where I grew up. I apprenticed as a bard in an Iron Age roundhouse in Wales, sharing the myths around a smoky fire, with adults and children crowded round to listen to the old tales of gods and heroes. So thank you to my first bardic mentor and friend, the archaeologist nicknamed a dark necromancer by King Arthur. But that's a tale for another time. Since then, I have attended and hosted storytelling circles where I've learned from many, including Millie Jackdaw and Peter Stevenson, who regularly support and inspire my work. I've honed my craft and told to audiences numbering from 1 to 100 or more, and everything in between. And over the years, I have found that stories, whether shared in a ritual setting or a bustling market, carry magic that connects us back to our past and forward to the future, all while enchanting the now and bringing us closer to the magical powers that we hold dear. The deities, the archetypes, the spirits and energies who we come to know better through their tales. We can learn magic through stories, we can meet our deities through stories, and we can heal ourselves through stories. By sharing them, we also share that magic, connection, and healing with those around us. Stories live through the telling of them, and this is how they weave the much needed magic of connection and understanding through the world. In short, the world needs storytellers. Now, perhaps you picked up this book, or you're thinking about picking up this book, thinking you'd never be brave enough to tell anyone else a story. And there's plenty of magic in these pages for you if that isn't your path. And even so, I'd like to invite you to just gently hold the thought that we are stories. We humans have told stories for as long as we have had language. And storytelling can be as simple as telling a friend, "Oh, I heard a tale I really loved, and it went something like..." One reason storytelling is so powerful is that narrative is part of how we communicate, make, and share our understanding of the world. Thus, as you learn more stories, you expand your understanding of what's possible. And as you deepen your skills in sharing them, you strengthen your ability to change your life, and thus the world. Welcome to the world of storytelling as magic, and storytelling for magic. I can't wait to hear the stories you choose to share. Now, in an ideal world, I'd invite you along to our local storytelling circle in a cozy bookshop tucked away by the sea to show you the magic of storytelling. Or we'd meet around a fire at a festival and swap tales deep into the night. We'd weave myth-soaked ritual together in fields and forest and halls as the moon rises high in the sky or the sun warms our skin. And you never know, maybe one day we will. But for now, I wrote this book as something that people can put in their pocket to turn to as often as they like. I've always found books to be magical anyway. They carry words across time and space, so I can speak to you in my future, your present, And this is my offering to magical folk who love stories. Whether druids, witches, magicians, pagans, occultists, or even bards yourselves, I hope you find some inspiration, some Arwen in these pages. I've always been fascinated by how art and magic intertwine and how closely related performance and ritual are. In a nutshell, why not an eggshell? What kind of nut? But I digress. In a nutshell, this is because the human animal is a sensual creature, and art is the language of the senses. Symbols, colors, rhythm, music, narrative, movement, beauty, wonder, all the sensory and emotive delights, all entice us in and speak to our deep selves. Narrative has a hypnotic effect, calming our conscious, chattering worries, and guiding our powerful magical subconscious in healing and transforming. Beauty relaxes us, wraps us in its arms, and lifts our spirits, empowering us to engage in the magic of magic. And experiencing the confidence of someone leading a ritual, acting as if they were indeed the powerful priestess they are magically, allows us to open the possibility with trust. When the outward expression reflects the inner power, it helps us to find our way to deeper places more easily. And it's fun. So just as magicians find magic words in their grimoires, to oversimplify things quite a lot, bards transform all language into magic. But how? In the stories, the skill is often given to the bard from divine sources. Taliesin, for example, the Welsh great bard, acquired the Arwen, the divine inspiration, through an apparent accident after his year and a day stirring the cauldron of the goddess and witch Ceridwen. In Greek mythology, the muses grant their artistic devotees inspiration and the divine spark of genius that makes their art sing. In Norse mythology, Odin worked hard to get close enough to earn a sip of the mead of inspiration from a giant, or steal it, depending on how you think about it, and then carried all of it back to the gods, dripping some of it into the land of humans. The magic in the music and the words, then, comes from a union between devotion and the divine. In folklore, particularly skilled musicians may be said to have been blessed with their ability to enchant an audience by the fairy queen herself. The bard puts in the work to develop their skills and make space for the fire of inspiration, and the divine muse pours through them. If, like me, you grew up in an area without much obvious oral storytelling, or at least as far as I was concerned as a sort of 10, 11-year-old starting to explore magic, I didn't know where to look for it. I didn't find it easy to find. So if that's familiar to you, then you might know stories from novels and film adaptations, like Disney's animated films. These are very often different to the tales they were based on, and that's absolutely fine. Stories have evolved and been rewritten and reimagined for longer than we have written history. It is definitely worth looking up the original versions, however, so you can begin to explore the magical threads and tap into the archetypes and energies behind the modern versions. Plus, if you want to tell them, it avoids copyright issues. But also, the versions of the stories that we have access to, the versions of stories that we can find, are the ones that catch something about their time and something about human nature. So as stories are retold and are changed, some will endure, and those are ones that carry deeper threads, deeper connections, and some will fade away. And all of that is as it should be. So in here, I also talk about how to tell a story. If you've been seeking out storytellers, you'll have noticed that each person has their own style of telling tales. just as every witch, magician, druid, bard, and ritualist has their own way of performing magic. Storytelling comes from a personal expression of something magical, and so the style has to arise from the storyteller's nature. This isn't something you need to worry about working out. It is something that will develop naturally. So the trick is to play and find your rhythm, your magic in the story. Like working magic, to tell a story, you learn the skills and the shape. And then you get out of your own way and enter into relationship with the other beings present. In magic, that might be spirits and gods. And in performance, that might just be a human audience. But in magical storytelling, those beings include the listening humans, the deities, and spirits, your divine self, and the magic. As well as telling stories as part of ritual or creating a ritual from story, practicing storytelling also gives you a whole host of skills, which you can use more broadly in ritual and magic. Some of these include different voices, how to guide listeners on a journey, trance induction, research skills, law keeping and memory skills, communication, clarity, ritual drama, how to create a journey, connecting with spirits, and many, many more. I'll admit I go into more detail in here, but I just thought I'd give you a taste. The dreaming is done, the circle is open, and all have left. I look round at the empty ritual yurt, fresh sunlight seeping through the canvas. The tale is done, at least for now, but a storyteller's skills are carried with them. The gifts of the bards in whose footsteps I walk are intangible, but fill me with a warmth that continues to grow with every tale shared. And I remember that human beings have always shared stories. We shape our world with stories. We understand ourselves and each other with stories. There's a risk here and a responsibility to choose the stories we keep alive carefully, to bring growth and love and healing, and challenge sometimes, of course. Resting in my heart are the tales of my gods, of the land, and of magic. I know that I'll continue to share them as blessings and enchantments for the rest of my life, and they bless me with so much in return. We are storytellers, and we are magic. So that was a little taste of some of the sections throughout the book. And of course, I go into practical steps of how to actually do each of these pieces. What are the useful skills for a storyteller, or at least the ones I consider to be most useful? Where do you start with looking for new stories? How do you begin to break them down to learn them? And when we start to work on learning stories and working out how to learn the stories, then we begin to develop our skills in memory and holding bigger pieces in our minds in other ways for other things. There was a video that I found linked just yesterday on the Nordic Animism YouTube channel, where the chap, I can't remember his name, I'm afraid, is interviewing someone about Indigenous memory techniques. And she's from Australia, and she studied the Indigenous people in Australia and how complex and intricate and amazing and powerful their memory techniques are, the ways in which they learn things. And to summarize very briefly, these techniques are rooted in place and embodiment and song. They're rooted in stories, and the stories are told throughout a journey. If you think about all the stories that you've ever heard, ever read, ever seen, there's a good chance that there will have been a journey through places, through locations. And those journeys through those places are part of how we learn those stories, and we learn how to be in the world in different stages, how to go on an emotional journey as well as a physical journey, because we see it in those places. And when we're telling stories, we often embody them. We bring in rhythm and tone. So it made perfect sense to me that she was talking about how the Indigenous people in Australia have what we call, like, we know what you may have heard of as songlines, and that's one of the amazing ways they learn things. It makes sense to me because as a storyteller, that is how I and other storytellers learn things, how human beings learn things. Memory is always the big thing that people get hung up on, especially if, like me, they are ADHD or slightly older, or, you know, and so many of us as well, we've come to rely on external things for our memory, right? I have to write everything down to remember it. I have to write it down to think it through because of the ADHD. Like, we put things in books and then we leave our memory in there. And that means that we can have so much in our external memory that we don't need to keep in our heads. But we still do need to be able to remember some things. And we have that ability, we have that capacity. And storytelling is one way you can actually improve your memory. I could go further down that rabbit hole, but I'm going to leave that for the moment. And I'd like to invite, if anyone here live has any questions or any comments, anything that's coming up about any of this, before I move into the next piece. And thank you. It's okay if you need to disappear, that's totally fine. You'll be able to catch the rest of it on the replay. Anyone want to say anything? You can come off mute and speak, or put it on the chat and I'll read it out. Kat?
I think your book is going to be an inspiration to authors and writers everywhere. I mean, I can see it just being stimulating to a lot of the faculties that we authors use. So good job, Halo.
Thank you.
Do you, oh, do you have any thoughts about the difference between the magic in oral versus written storytelling?
Yes. And I don't actually write particularly much about that. So one of the pieces is that there are many ways in which they overlap. And so many of the things that work in one space, you can translate them over. You can utilize different aspects of it. But we do interact differently with the written word than we do with the oral word, with the spoken word. And once we put something down in a book or on a recording, it becomes solid and unchangeable, and we start to have a different relationship to it, to when it's spoken in the moment. And this is why that moment of oral storytelling, whether it's in ritual or leaning on the pub bar, or like wherever around the dinner table, yeah, or walking with your friends, or wherever that storytelling is happening, in that moment you are kind of creating something together that is unique for that moment, and it ripples out from that moment. Because it's spoken, you've got the aspect of the magic that is carried in the voice. So the vibrations of sound, which vibrate in our bodies in specific ways, whether you can hear them or feel them. Yeah. And that relates to rhythm as well. Yeah. So there's sort of, you can see where these are kind of overlapping. Obviously I'm a very talky person, I'm a very verbal person. So for me, there's a lot about that. But these things apply for people who are also mute. There are aspects of that can apply. It's just slightly different. Whereas the written word once it's pinned down, you're kind of making something that isn't moving to ripple out in the same way. It's a solid piece. So you can make like a written charm and place it somewhere, and it's like holding a piece of energy. It anchors it there. And if it's big enough, like if there's enough power in it, then it holds a big chunk of energy, and that affects things around it. But the spoken word kind of moves like a river rather than like a lake. Yeah. Does that make sense?
I like that. You know, I talk a lot in my book and other places about journaling on paper rather than on a device, and how writing on paper engages the brain and the memory much more than writing on a device. And I see the correlation and wisdom in what you're saying about how sound would be first, then writing on paper. You know what I'm saying? Would kind of just naturally kind of progress in that way of becoming tangible. If thoughts or things, sound certainly is an energy and a vibration. And much of magic is energy and vibration.
Exactly.
I love that. Thank you.
And there's also that piece that sound and spoken word is inherently in relationship, because there is a speaker and there is a listener, and it's in that moment, and it moves through time, and it has its effects move through time, but it's in that relationship, whether it's between you and the spirits, you and the land, you and the people, like around the human embodied people around you, right? It's in that relationship, whereas the written word kind of gets taken out of that. It's like I was saying at the very beginning, it's very strange having my book out in the world and knowing that people are going to be rifling through it and reading words that I wrote at this point 2 years ago. That was who I was then. And so you're going to come into a relationship with a part of me that is kind of pinned down and can't move in relation to you or in relation to where I am now. And that's really useful magically if you want something that's going to be enduring, but it's different, right? Leslie, I think I saw you wave, and were you going to say something or ask something?
I did. It was I was researching Hinduism and like the Vedic, the prior, how long their stories have been passed, how old they are. Not that I can find the article where I read this, but it was that storytelling was as essential as breathing food. It was one of the main things, that spirit, that soul. And for myself, it was like a light bulb went off because of my ADHD and problems concentrating. I had narrowed myself from stories. I didn't read fiction. I didn't watch films. I didn't watch TV. I didn't go to the theatre, any of that. And it was suddenly being able to sit through a 3-hour film without noticing the time, completely engaged in the story, out of nowhere, just this, I'm going to watch this, even though it was 3 hours long. I don't know why. And it's kicked all of that. And suddenly, I spend the time, if I can't watch it all in one go, I will stop and I will come back to it. But I was feeling that I was so cut off from myself and from, I think, people, and it's just so important. And I've just been going through my old magical writings and my invocations and thinking, where's that person gone? It was so easy. And I've had trouble over the last few years writing meditations, writing, path workings. So it really that one thing struck me so hard, and it's like, no, I've really got to make that effort. So the fact that this has come along around, and I'm trying to expand my thinking and my magical workings of different ways of doing it. So it just comes in so well with that. But it was just such an interesting thing that it was almost as essential as breathing, that the humans need stories.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And like, it's an honor to hear that this has come at such an important moment for you. And I hope that you find it supportive, and do, all of you, of course, come and chat if things come up, like share about it in the Enchanted Academy or on my Facebook page or like wherever your interactions are. The Enchanted Academy has a space for conversations, and I encourage people to come and have conversations because it's a safe space with other magical folk exploring similar things. But you know, wherever it is, like reach out and connect, because that's what I'm here for. But it is true. It is true. For us, stories are as important as eating and breathing. Stories are, they are how we understand ourselves, how we understand the world, how we are in relationship, how we are together. We find ourselves in those stories and understand who we are in relationship to the characters in the stories. And stories can be enduring stories, as in the legends and the folk tales, or they can be momentary stories that strike a nerve or strike a chord or hit a nerve in the moment, in the modern tales and things, right? But there's still that relationship between us and the narrative and the characters within there, and the journeys that they go on. They help us to go through those journeys internally. And when we sit and I say sit metaphorically, when we're able to engage with that, it can give us space where our conscious mind is distracted. So like on a psychological level, our conscious mind can be distracted by, oh, look at all the pretty colors, or listen to all the pretty things, isn't this exciting? And our deep selves, our spirits, our subconscious, however you want to look at it, are engaging with the magical processes and the emotional processes underlying it. And there are certain stories that if I tell them or read them, even though they're not what happened in my life, like I'm not a Selkie, I can barely swim, right? I don't turn into a seal. But the Selkie stories, some of the Selkie stories, like if I read them or tell them, I can start to cry because there's something emotionally in me that they resonate with, and it gives me space for that. So that's one of the reasons in which they're important. But the whole question around ADHD and the ways in which different people's brains engage with the world differently, and like ADHD is a useful descriptor for a certain set of those relationships, right, and ways of approaching. Like I understand what you're meaning by that. I am also ADHD diagnosed. Yeah. There are that then, like you tell me you're ADHD and you've gotten to a point where you're struggling with things. Well, you've just told me a story about yourself that helps me to understand where you're at. And from there, we can share stories about, well, how can you come back to that place where ritual is easy, where writing those rituals is easy, where following a story feels natural again. And it's finding those stories that other people tell about their journeys from when they started to find it difficult because of the stresses of the world, the way that like our challenges have impacted us negatively, the way that like, the stress, like all of those different things, those things that come up. And this is true for people who aren't ADHD as well, of course, and there are other things going on for other people. But we start to look at that and go, okay, what stories do people tell about how they found their way home again? What are the stories about people finding their way home? And sometimes for things like this, it isn't about finding our way back to where we started, but it's about going on a journey and remembering that we are different now. And how do we be who we are now and still do what we want to be doing, still be in that space that is right for us, that we need. So like the stories of people who go undergoing an initiatory journey, like Gwion Bach, who encounters the cauldron of Ceridwen and becomes Taliesin the Great Bard. He is no longer at the end who he was when he began. He is irrevocably changed. And yet, he is all that he was and more. And the journey can be hard, and sometimes we go through points where we lose sight of who we are. And stories like that can help us move through them. I've expanded a lot on that because that touched something. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie, for sharing. So, I hear you. I would like to share a story with you today. And it's only a short story, and then we're going to do a little bit of magic weaving out of it. Okay. And this may be a story that you already know. It's quite a familiar story for many people. I invite you to just take a moment to listen and ask the question of, what am I hearing in this today? This story happened a very long time ago in ancient Greece. In ancient Greece, there was a woman named Pandora. And Pandora, she was just an ordinary kind of person. She was an ordinary kind of human. She had extraordinary roots, but when we meet her, she was just living her life. She was curious about things. She got excited about things. She got sad about things. She'd watch the stars overhead at night and marvel at the sunsets. She'd breathe in the beauty of the olive trees and breathe out a sigh of relief that it was time to go to bed. One day, she was presented with a box. She was told, whatever you do, do not look inside the box. I can do that, she said. And she placed it very carefully next to the wall. On a side, it was nice, steep, dark wood, polished, smooth. The box sat there as she swore it was watching her. She went about her day. And the sun set as she breathed a sigh of relief that she could go and dream. She loved to dream, for dreams would tell her all the things that she'd seen in the day and more besides. And as she walked past the box on the side, she thought perhaps she could hear it singing. No, she was not to open it. She was just looking after it. And she went to bed. The next day she woke up, and as she walked past the box to head outside to go and do whatever she was doing that day, she stopped for a moment, and there was definitely a sound coming from within it. As she was so curious. She's not been told why she shouldn't be looking in it. She's not been told what was in it. She's not been told anything about it except that she shouldn't look in it. And of course, inquiring minds want to know. She went about her day, but the memory of the box tickled at the back of her brain. The sun set and she sighed a sigh of relief that she got to go and dream again. And as she walked past the box, she thought to herself, oh, you know what? A little peek wouldn't hurt. She went to lift the lid and remembered that she shouldn't. But then, why would someone give her a box that wasn't locked if she wasn't meant to look in it? She opened it up, and out of the box flew all of the troubles and trials and tribulations of civilization. All of, as they would say then, the woes of the world. The storm of dark wings beating around her. She shut the box with a slam. And the spirits, the troubles, flew out across the world. What have I done? I should never have looked. Why did they give me a box that wasn't locked if I wasn't meant to look? And then she heard a small voice, a tiny voice, a gentle song, singing to itself from within the box she had thought empty. She was a little bit nervous, but what worse could there be? She opened the box, and inside was a small, bright spirit. And the spirit said, Pandora, my name is Hope. And I am known through stories. Tell the people what you have found in this box and let them know that I am free in the world too. And Hope flew out of the box. And wherever there were troubles, there too hope could be found. Wherever there were people speaking of woe, there too were stories of hope. And Pandora, who told the tale knowing that she would get the blame, knowing that she had been set up, she still told that tale so that we would know that wherever there is trouble, there is hope. Wherever the woes of civilization are, there too we can find the bright light of story to guide us through. Thank you. So each month I share a story from my doctor's bag as the fairy doctor, and I'll talk a little bit explicitly about the magic within it, what you can do with it. But today, rather than going into details and thinking about it, thank you, Kat, that I would like to invite you to join me in a little piece of magic. So whether you are here live or watching on the replay, take that moment to remember your connection to the earth, to feel yourself resting on the earth, to breathe in and to remember the stars that guide us in the sky above. And to breathe into that connection and remember the seas and the waters around us and through us. And the magic that flows, the circle that holds us all here. And I invite you to pay attention to your breath. As you breathe in, let it fill your lungs, and as you breathe out, let it carry away any tensions. As you breathe in, gather yourself up and become aware of your body, of yourself, and rest into the space that you are in. And as you breathe out, allow yourself to relax, to rest, held by the earth beneath you, held by the bones of your body. Breathe in and gather yourself up into your center. Breathe out and rest upon the earth. Feel yourself supported and connected. And there is an old myth that within us we carry 3 cauldrons. In our belly, the cauldron of power, where all that we put into our body is transformed into a fire that moves us forwards, that we can use to be in the world. And in our hearts is a cauldron of love and relationship and communication and connection, where all our stories rest. And in our skulls, the cauldron of inspiration. And in your skull, in your head, become aware, imagine, notice that cauldron of inspiration. Just take a moment to breathe in and strengthen that image. Feeling that energy there. Like there is a vessel in your skull that inspiration can flow into. And perhaps you might want to notice how that cauldron is. Is it upright or is it tipped? Is it whole and strong? Do you notice any cracks? Perhaps it's beautifully decorated. And take a moment to gaze into the cauldron, to breathe into it. And perhaps you see this like a visual, or perhaps you know it. Perhaps you hear it like a song, or feel it like a weight. I invite you to notice what feeds your cauldron of inspiration. Where does your inspiration come from? Have you been letting it flow into you? Have you been allowing yourself to be open to that inspiration? And have you been keeping out the troubles of the world that don't need to go in your cauldron? Or have you been letting them in? I invite you to imagine yourself maybe stirring the contents of that cauldron, or maybe there's a fire underneath that you want to stoke, or maybe you just see it growing brighter. Maybe you want to let yourself open up to let more inspiration flow in. Or maybe your cauldron of inspiration is quite full enough, thank you. Just take a moment to shift the image. To feed that cauldron, to feed the flames beneath it, to brighten it, to stir it, to settle it down. Maybe you want to breathe on it and let it come to stillness, to calm. Now, when you're ready, imagine that you are dipping your hands, or a cup if you've been smart enough to bring one, into the cauldron of inspiration. Scoop some out and drink it down. And you might even want to move your hands so that you can embody that experience, like you are scooping up that energy out of the cauldron of inspiration and drinking it down. You might breathe in or you might swallow and feel that inspiration flowing down your throat, down your neck, into your heart, filling up the cauldron from which you give in relationship and receive in relationship. So that that divine inspiration begins to bless all of those connections with the humans in your life, with the cats in your life, with the spirits in your life, with yourself. Just take a moment to breathe and feel that flowing down through you, through your heart, into the cauldron in your belly, through your body. You might even want to scoop up and drink some more, or you might just want to let that inspiration flow out through you. Just take a few breaths to notice what arises for you in this moment. In your own time, take one more breath. Really breathe in and feel that inspiration sinking into you. And as you breathe out, let it settle into your body, into your space, into yourself. And know that you always are connected to divine inspiration. You always have that connection. And you can open to it, and you can slow it or speed it. You can heat it up and burn away the troubles of the world. or you can brew them in and transform them and let them flow down to fuel you and to feed what you share with the world. When you're ready, take a nice breath. As you breathe out, feel yourself resting upon the earth, back where you began, in the here and now, in this Zoom room, in your room, your space. Just take a moment to feel that. Feel yourself back here. You might want to roll your shoulders or shake it off, or maybe you just want to let that settle and let that sit. In our lives and in the world at large, we go through various periods where things get hard and challenging, where there is chaos, where there is stuff going on, whether it's personal or broader cultural. There are always challenges around. And it is stories that help us find hope and find the path through the dark, dark forest, through the dark nights of the soul. The stories also give us ways in which we can share methods for coming together in community. We can share stories of resistance, of rebellion, of creativity, of community building, of building a better world. We can write new stories about the world that we choose to create. And when we do that as fate weavers, as magic folk, we do that as enchantments. We write those stories, we speak those stories, we share those stories as spells to remind ourselves that the world is full of magic, of spirits, and of hope, to re-enchant our understanding of the world. So I want to share with you that I have a brand new course coming up, and I'm going to be starting it's going to be starting on the 1st of April, on April Fool's Day. Not because it's a joke, but because when we start something new and we are brave, it often feels like a fool's leap. And the fool is card 0 in the tarot, is the start of a story with a small knapsack or handkerchief with a little bit of what we bring with us, but a spring in our step. We don't know what's beyond the cliff of the now, but we leap anyway because we trust that the story of our lives and that the magic in the world will guide us. Whenever I come upon hard times and I'm feeling uninspired and I'm struggling, when there are challenges, I always turn back to, because I am a religious pagan at heart, I come back to my relationship with my gods and I come back to story. So I have created a course, and I say a course. This is both a course in the traditional sense and a bardic initiation. The Cauldron of Arwen. It is a 3-month course with 9 weeks of a journey, 3 weeks of class, and then a week to integrate, to explore, and then 3 weeks, and then a week to integrate and develop, and then 3 weeks and a week to come together and finalize 3 months of 3, because 3 is a magic number. In the Cauldron of Arwen, I am inviting you to step in and to meet with Ceridwen, the goddess of inspiration and initiation, the great bard Taliesin, and to let them guide you on a journey. In this course, we will be exploring your storytelling powers through voice, through art, through writing, through performance, and through magic, through the mediums that are close to your heart. We will be exploring story and awakening your, what I call your bardic self, your creative self. You'll learn how to connect with Ceridwen and Taliesin to build a devotional practice that feeds you and that supports your inspiration and creativity. How to learn and remember and share a story in different mediums. How to share it as an act of enchantment. And how also to listen to the stories of the land and the gods. It's a journey through the story of the birth of Taliesin, how he became that bard, where you can gather your stories and build your bardic skills. The book, Storytelling for Magic, is kind of the course book for it, but we're going to go deeper because we can in person. We can share stories, we can work on what matters for you. And now, because you have come here live, and for those of you, because I am aware that internet can be difficult and not everyone can get on these lives, I'm going to make this open to anyone who watches the replay up until Imbolc, which is the 1st of February, right? So the next 3 days. I'm going to offer you a special offer, okay? So the course, this is 3 months. The set price is £333. But for those of you that are here live or that watch in the next 3 days and get in touch with me and let me know that you have watched it in these 3 days, I want to give you a code that lets you actually get this vastly reduced. So if you use this link, I'm offering it at £125 for the full course. But I'm also opening up the Bardic Grove. So the Bardic Grove includes this course, the Cauldron of Arwen, but it also includes access to the Elemental Library, which has Foundations of Witchcraft, Elemental Magic, like self-study courses on basics, on like these fundamental pieces and going deeper into these different aspects of magic. And again, for those that are here live, I'm offering this for, normally it's £49 a month, but I'm going to put it for £39 a month for you, so you can check out all the details again at that link. And because some of you are already in the Crimson Coven, and some of you are interested about doing that work with me as well, which is similar to the Bardic Grove in setup, but we work with sensual magic, embodied magic. We're currently working on exploring the elements of Eros, so the elements embodied. And starting in the next couple of months, I'm going to be offering Rope for Ritual courses. So there's a reason these are offered separately. It's because it's very different types of magic, or not different types of magic, different themes, right? So to give you the space, if one calls to you and not the other, you can do that. But I've also set up an option, the Enchanter's Circle, where you can do both. So if you want to, you can join the Enchanter's Circle. And again, I've set up a special promo code for you for coming today. So these codes are open until the 14th of February, until Valentine's Day. So you've got a couple of weeks in order to look it over, to get in touch and ask me any questions. and the Enchanter's Circle, which includes the Crimson Coven, the Bardic Grove, the Elemental Library, the Cauldron of Arwen, Rope for Ritual, which is of course a live course starting soon, all of the replays of Deities of Love and Passion, and the Eros courses that have been going on in the Crimson Coven. With this special link, you can join that monthly for £75. That, if you join at these prices, they will continue at that price for you for as long as you stay a member on whichever thing you want to. So even if they go up later, they won't go up for you. I invite you to have a look, to feel into what calls for you. And if you are feeling called to any of these things and the price is out of your reach, I still want you. So I have scholarships, I have offers. I can offer you a scholarship, right? The course will run if I get enough people. And if I get enough people and it runs and you need it, you let me know. And I know how hard it can be to ask. So I want to encourage you. I have been there. Ask. I have set that up so that I can make space and make it accessible to as many people as possible. If you can afford it, then to pay full price, then you are also helping other people you're making it accessible for other people. That's how I can offer the scholarships. So you have 3 links in the chat, which are special offers. If you want to just come and do the Cauldron of Arwen, the course, which is a 3-month course for 125 instead of 333, that link is there for you. If you want to join the Bardic Grove and explore more of that magic for £39 a month, which works out cheaper than just doing the course, then that link is there for you. And if you want to come and do everything that I offer in the Enchanted Academy, the Enchanter's Circle is for you. And as I say, those spaces will stay open. So as more things get added, you get access to more things. Thus ends the, what do we call this? Advert break / invitation to come and join me. And one of the reasons that I prioritize the memberships and I make them cheaper is because my goal in my heart, what I really, really want more than anything else is to build a community where we are all learning from each other, building magic, sharing our skills. So that is what's important to me. And I hope that that appeals to you as well. So if it does, then let me know. Welcome to our late arrivals. You have come in just at the very end, so you've managed to catch the special offer blurb. But this has been the book launch party for Storytelling for Magic. I would like to open the floor for any questions, and I will. I'm going to open the floor for any questions while we're still recording, and there will also be 10 minutes after I stop recording in case there's anyone that didn't want to be caught by the camera. So does anyone have any questions about Storytelling for Magic, about the courses, about anything magical that I might be able to answer, or maybe that I can't answer? I love questions that are difficult. I also like to hear people's comments.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning, but I was actually curious about how familiar you are with this book, Poetry as Spellcasting, and how much overlap in content there might be between your books. Like, I'm dying to read yours to compare them.
I have not read it. So I will go and add that to my list of books to read, well, to buy first, and I will investigate. But no, I haven't read that because my focus was on storytelling. I am a poet, and I've seen that, I believe, but I'd forgotten that it existed. So have you got my book as well?
Not yet.
That's okay. I'm just curious. I was just going to say, if you have, like, let us know as soon as you read them both, because I wanna know, like, where are the overlaps? Where do we disagree, right? Because there may well be points where we like where that. Who's the author for that one?
Um,
Poetry as spellcasting.
oh goodness. I actually have to pronounce people's names.
Or
Yeah, there's
I
show it.
think it's
three
by
authors,
Tamiko Buyer.
Destiny Hemphill and Lisbeth White, the three authors. Yeah. The one they said, Tamiko Buyer and Destiny Hemphill and Lisbeth White.
Thank you very much.
I write better through really long poetry than through prose. So I really liked that book. But my problem is stick-to-itedness. I'm also ADHD is all bleep and distracted by something going on outside.
That's entirely understandable. Yeah, it's so one of the things that you might find useful in here, I don't know if they cover it in there, is about the way in which we use our voice when we are speaking spells, speaking stories, and you can apply all of those principles to speaking poetry as well. So I actually, as I've done storytelling and I physically like write poetry as well. When I go and go to a poetry like reading, one of the things that I will do sometimes is improvise poetry around a story. And I get people to set a timer. And I say, right, okay, give me 2 minutes, tell me when I'm coming up on 30 seconds and I'll wrap it up. And I use all of the techniques from the storytelling in how I construct and remember and tell the poem in that moment. So there is a huge amount of overlap in those aspects of it. But yes, poetry and prose, the rhyming poetry and like prose type things can be quite different writing. Thank you for sharing that.
My grandmother on my dad's side she taught lessons, particularly to teenagers, in the stories that she told. And it's kind of like a family tradition to where there's no such thing as a generation gap if you're telling enough stories.
Yeah, that makes sense. We didn't have a lot of traditional storytelling in my family, like telling folk tales, fairy tales, and things like that. But I remember listening to my gran tell stories about her childhood and stories about her life, and that kind of bridged the way a little bit in that space, and that was really lovely. And occasionally I'd so it would be life stories that my family would share, and I always felt like, oh, we don't tell any stories. And then as I got older I realized, no, those are stories too. One of the things you said about the stick-to-itedness in presumably in relation to ADHD that I kind of wanted to respond to. One of the things that I do is that my like ADHD brain, I will get distracted, or like I'll be excited about something and then I'll get excited about something else and I wander off, and that's fine, because what I do is I spiral back. So I'll be spiraling through different things. And this is why I ended up with 2 books coming out at the same time I finished my PhD, because I was spiraling through writing the 3 different things at the same time. And very explicit queer erotic novella that has not been published in physical books as well, just because I needed a break from anything serious under a pen name, a different pen name. So yeah, that, like, the stick-to-itiveness. I always used to feel really stressed about not being consistent and not being disciplined enough. And then I was reminded by my gods and my spirit, it's like, no, you're consistent in that you consistently come back. You are consistently engaged with magic. So I invite you and anyone listening, if you feel like you are not consistent because you're ADHD or for whatever reason, to actually notice the ways in which you are consistent. And that might be in the underlying thread that you're passionate about, or threads that you're passionate about. Anyone else like to share anything or ask anything before we close? Okay. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you for all of your comments in the chat. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and be in this space and to make the time for storytelling and for magic, because these are things that are very, very important to me and to other people, to yourselves, and it warms my heart that they are. Thank you for your support on my lovely new book that I'm so excited about. If you haven't already got a copy and you need some support finding the links to find it, let me know. Storytelling for Magic, available in all good bookstores and all wicked ones. A little trickier to get in mainland Europe at the moment, but still not impossible. And yes, I would love to invite you to join me in the Cauldron of Arwen, in the Bardic Grove, in the Enchanter's Circle, at whichever level it is you want to engage with that. I would be absolutely delighted to weave stories and work magic with each and every one of you. And I cannot wait to dive into that work. Also, please bring your cat. So let's close our space. Take a moment to just feel into that connection that you have with the earth, the stars, the sea. We take a breath for the earth beneath us and the land, for our relationship with the land and for all the peoples of this land, the land that you are on. Take a breath for the sky above, for the stars through which all the stories are woven, the stars that guide us. And a breath for the seas and the rivers and the waters that flow through the land, around the land, and through us too. And feel that light, that bubble that held us all the way through this, that we cast at the beginning through candlelight. My little cauldron, which I can't pick up because it's too hot now. So imagine I'm holding a little cauldron with a tea light in it for you. Feel that light that flowed across wires and Wi-Fi, time and space. And now together, take a breath. And as you breathe out, let that light settle down, spread out, ripple out across the land, across the earth. Let it shine out across the sky and rain down to re-enchant the world. I'm going to blow out my candle with a kiss. And with thanks to the great bards of old, of now, divine bards, deities of inspiration, and to you, glorious, glorious beings, thank you. May your path always be enchanted and filled with story.